he'll probably end there to and their start there at the season unless he really just dominates in camp. Or there's your new multi-million-dollar winger, not new, but you gave Kreider that new contract. He's your third line winger. We're spending all that money on a third line winger. Which, hey, look, depth is great, and if Chris Kreider is your third line left wing, I think you're doing pretty well here. So, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I have been all about patience with this rebuild and everything they're doing. So I would really hate for them to say, okay, we have this kid, so now it's Stanley Cup or bust. So let's, buy out Lundqvist and we have this money and let's bring in some, center and trade off this other young asset and this and that. I think that the Rangers are actually in a really good position going into the draft. They have like 10 draft picks. And Gordon said that he's looking to use some of those draft picks to make some trades.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, which he's done really well these last couple of years, where he's used draft picks to bring in a guy like Fox and others. So I think that that's going to be the smart way to go. Maybe he could help bolster the defense by trading some of those picks, including, look, they're going to have another first-round pick, in which, Carolina lost game one tonight. That doesn't mean they're going to lose their series against Boston, but I'm rooting against it because that means the Rangers' other number one pick is going to be that much higher, which they can use in a deep draft to maybe get a nice defensive prospect. And look, I have nobody on my radar, but from another organization or maybe another young center or whatever, I think Gordon's shown that he's real crafty that way, where he can get some players by offering up some picks, which the Rangers have been able to accumulate these last couple of years during this rebuild and selling off players. So, I know he's mentioned that. So that's it's going to be interesting to watch at from now up until the draft or draft day, with Gordon being able to move some of these picks, multiple picks, to bring in maybe some other prospects or other players. So, yeah, I think the Rangers should continue to be patient, continue to add depth, young players, prospects, whatever they have to do, and then build this team, because that's the right way to do it. And, we talk about it all the time. The Rangers try to throw money at their problems, back in the day when there was no cap, and it just doesn't work. Building it from the foundation up is the way to go. It's what they've been doing. So, and it's been working. So I can't imagine that they're going to veer from that strategy.
All right, so I have to ask you again, KD, because as we say in our Ranger radio imaging there, and we start, we may not know everything, but we're sure as hell going to pretend that we do. I'm not going to pretend that I know the scenario here, but take me through again. If the Rangers, how does it work? Let's say Hank, they buy out his contract. Okay, let's just say the Hank thing gets taken care of. How does that affect the cap for the team?
Yeah, I mean, it opens up $8.5 million this upcoming season.
So that's how it works. So they buy him out, and it frees up that money for them to use, correct?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. For next season. I mean, that's a lot of money.
It is. It's a ton of money.
So again, it all depends on what they want to do, because they have the option to kick the can down the road on both Strome and DeAngelo. Now, DeAngelo, sat out in training camp last year. So I'm sure he's looking for a bigger deal here. So if the Rangers decide to take him to arbitration, what does he then do? I mean, look, it goes to arbitration. The arbitrator is going to give him whatever deal. I think the most they can give him is this 2-year deal. And I think that it would be very friendly for the Rangers to only be able to have to, bring him back for 2 years. I think that helps with a lot of what's going on. Again, Lundqvist is not going to be here this year. Gives Condre Miller, some more time to develop. No pressure on him really to come in and sort of be the man who maybe fills in, next to Trouba on the first line. Where you have, other veterans around to carry the load. So it's going to be, real interesting to see what they do, at that goaltending position. I've gone back and forth, on what I'd rather see, as far as what does Georgiev bring back if they look to trade him, or maybe they package him and to bring something back. Um, but at the same time, I've also mentioned that I'd love to see, these two young goaltenders and what's making me sort of go back to that is looking at the Columbus Blue Jackets, and their two young goalies, Korpisalo and Merzlikins, they're set. I mean, they got rid of Bobrovsky, and it's almost like they've actually gotten better in goal, and they have these two young guys. So, it's real interesting to think, should the Rangers, not that they're like real young, but, the Rangers could have these two young goaltenders leading the way, this tandem. It's enticing. I mean, at least for me.
Well,
Plus, you get the cap space. So, and I know you're a Georgiev guy. So I think there's a real argument there. I'd hate to be in that, in that Rangers brain trust to try to figure this one out.
well, here's another reason why to look at it. I think it is a good way to go. There's also the possibility that, I was just thinking about too, maybe, Georgiev may still have to prove himself as far as getting more gameplay. It's almost like, if they take care of Hank and get that out and they go with Georgie and Shesty next year, right? Again, two young guys. They're not going anywhere. And this, again, to me, there's no need to rush this, right? But if Georgiev gets some more ice time, or, if they split the deal, whatever the habit, again, to me, you talk about, all right, you're going to keep two young goalies. I mean, if you're Quinn, I mean, how do you go in terms of splitting that time up? But management upstairs could say, hey, look, we got two good guys here. They're young. They're not going anywhere. We don't need to steamroll and win the Stanley Cup this year. So let's split up the season or give, Shesty a little more, but make sure Georgiev gets enough so his stock can go up and be more enticing for a team either during the year or towards the trade deadline next year too. Because, as much as I love Georgie and everything else, I'm thinking maybe he doesn't really have that much of a resume right now where he might not bring back, enough in return right now. Again, these are just, this is all perspective, obviously, but that's a way to look at it too, in terms of let's keep these guys, let's build Georgie's stock up a little more, and then, let's see what happens. And again, Shesty's a little accident prone, so you might want to hang out with Georgie for a little bit, just for some insurance. But I think that's just another way to look at it too. And again, that's Gorton through strength and everything else. But obviously, none of that happens, if they keep Hank, obviously, and then it goes into the other aspect of it. And I think I kind of professed my thoughts last week. Is as much as I love Hank and everything else, I think it's just time to move on. And I think Stahl is the other thing. Let's just move on here and move forward. Pay these guys, let them go, send them home with a nice retirement package, and let's get the kids, move them up to the front seat of the truck, and let's start rolling.
Yeah, that sounds like the way to go. And actually, you know what, Paulie? As far as the Lundqvist buyout, I may be wrong on that. Actually, I think that they would save $5 million this year. I'm sorry, I think it's like $5 million
a ton of money
this year. Yeah, it's still a lot of money. I don't think that they. You know what? I was mistaken. I was thinking if he retired, they would save the whole $8.5 million.
Yeah,
that's
okay,
it.
That makes sense.
So so it would be the $5 million. My apologies. So they would save $5 million if they were to buy him out. They still had it. They would have like $3.5 million or whatever it is on at dead cap space, and then the next year they would have another $1.5 million in dead cap space next year. So again, it's a $5 million savings, which again is a large amount of money, as you said, and something that they could potentially bring in, someone to help this roster. But is that really the way that they want to go?
Well, listen to this. Hey, buddy, Chris is chatting with us here on the podcast chat, and he was saying the issue with keeping Georgie would be losing him for nothing in the expansion draft. What's your take on that?
I I don't think that there's always ways around that as far as losing, gold. You can always put somebody on the roster, like bring a guy. There's always ways to circumvent that kind of thing where you actually wouldn't lose it. You could just bring in a random guy off the scrap heap and put him on the roster and make that guy eligible for the draft. So I wouldn't worry about that because I think that there's always ways around that so you wouldn't lose a guy like Georgiev.
I don't even want to think about the Seattle Kraken right now.
I know. We got the number 1 overall pick.
I
don't care about expansion. I'm worried about our draft, not their draft. But yeah, so you know what? I think the Rangers management has to look at, as far as the buyout goes, is the $5 million that they're going to save this year, worth it? And what can we get for Georgiev? And if there's not a big market for Georgiev this year, can they package him? Or maybe they're like, you know what, let's keep him. Let's buy out Lundqvist. We have this money. But, Lundqvist still only has 1 year left on his contract. The Rangers don't need a ton of money this offseason to bring a lot of guys back either. It's the following offseason, in 2021, where they're going to lose a ton off the cap. I mean, you lose Lundqvist.
Well, that gets back to what I was saying before. If the Rangers kind of just take that approach, and they don't have to make those decisions next season, and let it just happen the following year, and they don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Well, they've already said, though, that they're going into the season with 2 goaltenders. So they're getting rid of somebody.
All right. So, but like I said, if that's the case, I mean, again, we as a fan base, we really can't lose with these situations. These are not bad situations. Because regardless, what I'm saying about, hanging on to Georgiev and maybe raising his stock or whatever, the kid's a great goaltender. He's going to help any team out that he goes to, all right? So, and guys like him and how they're cut, like him and Shesty and stuff like that, that kid's going to be around for a long time as far as I'm concerned. So, again, the Rangers, again, playing with house money. They're not going to not get, lack of decent return talent one way or the other, in return for Georgiev, and if he's packaged with somebody or whatever. And there's definitely teams out there that need help. I mean, you just look at the teams that just got, left this, qualifying round, okay? They're all looking at their rosters right now, one with the other. Whether it's Pittsburgh, whether a couple of guys have just, it's time to kind of just, recharge that squad or whatever the heck it is. It'll be interesting to see what happens, obviously, in terms of, Eastern Conference teams as opposed to Western Conference teams. But regardless, if you're JD and Gordon, especially now, man, with the number 1 pick, that must be just unbelievable for them as an organization. When you get that opportunity, right, and you take the bad thing in terms of how the team played and how they got knocked out, and then you get this pick and, scratch the tournaments. Let's say, again, they didn't make the playoffs or whatever. We wouldn't have got the pick. We wouldn't have been in there. We wouldn't have been in the mix for it. And now they're in. They just must be sitting around the table and throwing a few back and going, you got to be kidding me. And now it just changes everything. And the Rangers are in such a good situation. And I think us as Ranger fans just have to kind of, absolutely. It wouldn't be fun if we didn't get mad and nitpick, the way we did through the tournament and throughout the course of the season. And we'll continue to do that next year and training camp and everything else and exhibition games. I'll get mad too. But, man, this is fun. This is just great because, the thing now is, KD, obviously, is sitting back and watching how Davidson and Gorton mold this, how they don't screw this up, It's like with great power comes great responsibility. With great assets comes, expectations. I mean, look what's going on in Toronto. I mean, that's just a nightmare up there. I don't care what anybody says, whether it's their goaltending situation with Anderson, whether it's their big guys, their young guys. I mean, the lucky thing for them is they're young guys. But that a Hall of Fame coach up there, and then the guy came and keep it after him, he's a good coach too. and their problems up there are maybe bigger than